What seems to be the problem, pal?
There's just so much pain in the world, so many issues. I don't think I can bear it.
Hell, friendo, it sounds like you could use a dose of pop culture roulette.
Pop culture roulette? What's that? Some sort of pop culture themed podcast or something?
That's right, sonny boy. When hope seems far, dive into some PCR.
But I already get my entertainment news from Variety.
Huh, that's pretty good. If you're a chucklehead, PCR gives you news you need, condensed, unfiltered, and raw, from three nerds who know a little something about something.
Wow, okay, sign me up.
That's the spirit. Pop Culture Roulette. New episodes every Monday, available on all major podcast directories.
Welcome to this Movie Panel's One Shot. Let's have a nerdy little conversation. Today we are going to discuss the three-part episodic, I don't know what you would call this, the docu-series, but it's only got 3 episodes, of Superpowered, the DC story, a history of DC, whatever the subtitle of it is. That is streaming on HBO Max. We're going to discuss that. I've got some thoughts. But joining with me for this discussion through the the not in order history of DC is our southern dapper gent. Please welcome Blake Fowler.
The documentary series of events that have occurred out of order is as confusing as any comic book run DC has ever put out. I'll give you that.
Yes, but as long as there is Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, everything's going to be all right.
Everything will be fine. The Trinity exists in any continuity and timeline.
That is literally the undertone of that entire documentary.
All it is.
And as long as the Trinity, as long as we can have the Trinity, then everything's going to be okay.
You know, someone once said that the hierarchy of power in the DC universe was changing, and they were so wrong that they were reduced to a footnote in this docuseries. Literally, 3 minutes total time for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in this?
Shoot. Okay. So
let's just get into it.
We'll probably jump around just like this documentary.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, other than 2 still images, Ray Fisher's Cyborg is nowhere to be seen in this entire documentary.
It's rough sledding for Ray Fisher. Anything you thought they had smoothed over clearly has not occurred. Yeah, I was very surprised. I thought there would be more, and not a whole lot, of Cyborg, as he's not a massive character in the pantheon of DC, or even in the eyes of fans. But I thought there'd be more than, a couple of still images for his character.
Yeah. I mean, you would think, bringing him up when they are talking about, like Black Lightning, or, yep. Or when they talk about the New 52 and the fact that he then became a part of the Justice League. I think there would be something there. But yeah, so the documentary starts off, I would say, really strong. It starts off, and we start at the very beginning, and we get kind of the history of what led to Detective Comics, DC, and then Superman in 1938, launching everything. We're good to go. And they have this little timeline effect that they show, but we do not go in order through the whole thing. It jumps.
It's not fun.
That thing swings back and forth throughout the entire promotional video, because that is what this entire documentary
I was going to say, we need to clarify, this is about DC, by DC, for DC, surrounding the entirety of DC.
Is this not DC trying, or maybe even DC and Warner Brothers? There's some synergy going on here.
Sure. Of
them trying to convince maybe stakeholders or executives of Warner Brothers or something that please don't, please don't lose faith in us.
I felt like I was watching Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly promote Prestige Worldwide from Step Brothers. Like, that's really how I felt watching this.
It honestly
just a hype video.
Yeah, it honestly felt, the whole thing felt like a special feature off of a Blu-ray.
Sure. Oh, no. Okay. Yeah, that's a great assertion on your part.
The way they kind of do some of those little documentary behind the scenes That, and it also felt like a segment from DC Fandom from like 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's just like exclusively for DC people. No one else supposed to see this except for DC people.
Which is another thing I want to bring up is who's watching this other than DC people, like DC fans.
Literally, and I would argue, Laramy, barely them. If you look at some of the, I looked up some of the like the ratings, quote unquote. You can't really rate streaming, but number of views, it's weak. It's pretty weak. I think it's like in the bottom third of their streaming specials right now. So yeah, it's not being well received from what I can garner.
Yeah, it's interesting. But it's only interesting to possibly someone who is curious about DC.
So I'm going to be as the kids would say, I'm going to keep it 100 with you right here, Laramy. I started watching this and I probably got about 20 minutes in and I was like, I don't care. I do not care. This is clearly a piece of propaganda that DC is putting out for themselves. And I'm already a little miffed with Detective Comics entertainment, as it were, right now. And so maybe that factored into my being turned off by this docuseries. And to be honest, would not have finished it had you not said, hey, let's talk about this on the show. Now, I'm glad I did, because there were some cool things that happened throughout the docuseries, some interesting points that are made and brought up. But yeah, for the most part, it is self-serving to DC Entertainment and Warner Brothers.
Yeah, I don't know how much. Again, I don't know how much Warner Brothers, but because part of me almost thinks it's DC really pleading to Warner Brothers.
Yeah, well, I'm saying Warner Brothers in the sense that this is their company essentially. You know, DC is part of Warner. They had to okay putting this out. So yeah, it's self-serving to them in that sense.
So, as a DC fan, which is why I wanted to have you as the one to talk about this with. Mm-hmm. As a DC fan, so both of us are huge DC fans.
Absolutely.
Like I said, this is a docuseries that maybe someone who is unfamiliar with DC could maybe watch through and go, oh, I've now learned stuff about DC. Was there anything in this documentary you didn't already know?
Absolutely not. Again, interesting, yes, but already known for sure. I think the only thing, and we discussed this briefly before we turned the mics on here, the only thing I hadn't seen was the Superman test footage. With a very, very damp Superman being shown.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, it's not really shedding any light or treading any new ground for the hardened and ardent DC fan. So yeah, why are you putting this out other than, as you've said, just an on the knees begging Warner Brothers, please don't axe our entire department after the abominations that have been coming out recently.
Yeah, which that's another thing. The little interview with Zachary Levi, and he's talking about being on set of Fury of the Gods.
The best set I've ever been.
One of the most fun sets I've ever been on. I'm like, oh, dude, that didn't age well.
Well, you've got Zachary Levi, you've got Dwayne Johnson for a second, you've got Patty Jenkins, and
Dwayne Johnson sitting on the beach.
Sitting on the beach, hanging out, chilling. And all I can think of is, if you're new to DC, let's say for some reason you don't know about DC, you stumble upon this, you're watching it, there's 3 people who, up until this point in time, were supposed to be pretty key cogs that now have little to no role whatsoever in the DC universe.
Yeah.
So when were we making this, and why didn't we just go and axe that before it got put out?
They clearly made this in 2022.
Had to have been, right? Yeah. Maybe even parts of it in 2021.
Maybe. I will say there were a couple of things that I had never known before, which one of them I'll throw at you. I didn't know that in the 70s, Bob Kane actually admitted that Bill Finger helped him.
Yep. So
I thought that was a very recent thing.
No. So there's a documentary, for people who don't know, Batman and Me, I think is the name of it, on Amazon.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's about
something like that.
About Bob Kane and Bill Finger. And I don't believe it was discussed in that documentary, but that documentary...
Yeah, because I saw that documentary. And
that documentary caused me to go do some research on Batman, Bob Kane, and Bill Finger. And yeah, so during the 70s, during that press conference, you see he makes the announcement, look, this is not me. Yeah, no.
which was right after Bill Finger had passed
his
away.
passing. Yeah, who, as the documentary so briefly points out, died destitute. Like, we just glance over Bill Finger again.
They glance over anything negative.
Yeah,
absolutely anything.
Yeah, if it sheds a poor light, and that's, again, propaganda is the only word I can think of with self-serving propaganda, which propaganda is by definition, I suppose. But yeah, anything remotely negative, we're not even gonna. It's gonna be a one sentence, and then we're done.
Yeah, like quickly move on.
Yep.
There's the one guy who says, "Yeah, I wasn't really big into superheroes because they were kind of like little sissies and tights."
Yeah.
and then that just stops. Like, his interview's just done right after he says that.
Don't see him again.
Yeah. I don't think you do. But I can't even remember who it was that said that.
It's
but,
like I sat there thinking, it's like I don't know, when you're still living at home and you purchase something with your own money and you tell your parents half the price of what it actually costs, they don't get mad at you. That's how this felt. Like, we just left out all the negative stuff. We're gonna give you just enough negativity to make you feel like we're taking, an objective view to this, but we're really not.
Yeah, because I kind of even felt that when Greg Berlanti talked about how he was a closeted homosexual as a kid, and it's kind of like, okay, we let you say that, now we're not going to
talk about it anymore. Nope. We're going to give Milestone Media just a small cut of this documentary series, even though it's 3 episodes. You could have given Milestone their own episode.
Milestone can have their own documentary.
Their whole documentary.
Love a Milestone documentary.
But again, we DC is,
none of their characters are even named.
Yeah, they don't even talk about them.
They even Static Shock, the biggest one of all of them, never name him.
Yep. It's frustrating to hear DC preach diversity at this point in time, but it's a show me with your actions, don't tell me with your words kind of thing.
Yeah, they had no problem showing the Klan.
Yeah. Woof. Okay.
Yeah.
I know.
They had no problem showing footage of real life Klan members.
We see Charlottesville footage, and I don't know, man. The story that they're referencing, I understand us talking about that, but there's no need to give a platform or credence to the real things that are going. You could have talked about the story, the historical significance, connecting to present day, without giving another arena for those people to be shown and showcased.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. I do strongly recommend Superman Smashes the Klan, though.
Yeah, so. Even not a big Superman fan, I have read that, and it's a very good read.
So let me ask you, was there anything in the documentary that you actually thought was a really good segment?
To my grave, will sit and listen to Michael Uslan talk about Batman anytime he sits down. The story of him purchasing the rights, getting Batman made with Michael Keaton, and just his love for the character. I will... anything I can get my hands on with him talking. So I really enjoyed his pieces in that. And again, he's part of the machine, so he's only really bringing this really good stuff to light. But I did enjoy that. I wish we'd have given more time to Finger and Schuster and is it Siegler?
Yeah. Siegel and Schuster.
Yeah, Siegel and Schuster.
Because
I liked those pieces. I liked those small pieces of the docuseries, but there's not enough time.
And see, there's no mention of the fact that DC pretty much bamboozled Siegel and Schuster to sell over the rights to Superman for near to nothing.
Ripped them off.
And then, again, we talked about Bill Finger, but Siegel and Schuster not getting any credit for Superman until the 78 movie.
Yep.
40 years later, after they pretty much invented comic books, invented superheroes,
right?
They get nothing.
I wish we'd have delved more into that, and I wish they'd have delved more into the Lichtenstein paintings. There's a very brief segment about Ray Lichtenstein's pop art that he stole from comic books. And they talk about, these artists are making millions, but we don't see any money. I guarantee you, Detective Comics saw money out of the Liechtenstein paintings, even if the creators and the artists didn't see it. DC got their money.
Yeah, very possible.
But it's not filtered down to the people who put in the work, the time, and the effort to create those iconic images. I mean, the drowning girl image, even if you don't know comics, you've seen that piece of pop art in any number of TJ Maxx's or Ross's that have the canvas prints.
And the footage of him saying, I know many people say it resembles the work from comics. He goes, well, I'm inspired by it. I don't really think it's a copy. And I'm like, dude, that is a dead-on copy.
There's a video of him looking directly at the comic panel while he's painting.
It's also, I mean, that's like when Vanilla Ice tried to prove that Ice Ice Baby was not the same.
There's the
music.
the ting at the end.
No. You see, Under Pressure is dun 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 dun, and Ice Ice Baby is dun 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 da da dun da. It's that extra da da da. Yeah, that's what this artist was doing. No. See, they used orange right there, and I used blue.
I would love an entire documentary on that, though. And that's the thing, like, we're focusing, I think, on the wrong things that DC's trying to document. Again, I know this is just a plea for don't shut us down. But if you really want to not be shut down, delve into, dare I say, the gritty history, the unsightly and unseemly history of your company, and tell those stories of your creators that are underserved and underrecognized, and these stories of it essentially be a comeuppance for DC. It would have to be, but I would like to see more of that instead of what we got with this series.
Yeah, and going back to Michael Uslan, again, give me a documentary. Turn his book, The Boy Who Loved Batman.
Yep.
Turn that into a documentary.
Fantastic read.
But also acknowledge the fact that he also bought the rights to Swamp Thing.
Yep. And
the Swamp Thing movie is not mentioned in this documentary.
Yep.
They leave out the Swamp Thing movies, both of them.
The TV series.
They leave out the TV series, even the DC one. They don't mention DC Online at all.
Right.
They show Titans. They never show anything else that was a part of that original DC Online run.
They don't talk about it, though. They show it.
No, they show it. They don't talk about it. Yeah.
No Doom Patrol, which is one of the better DC things going.
Yeah. It's all canceled now.
Yeah,
so.
Well, I know, but still, it's still one of the better things going, even if it's not currently.
Even when they talk about the Arrowverse and how Berlanti brought DC, I mean, they give him his praise and all, and of course, it helps that Berlanti is the executive producer of this documentary. But
just to be clear,
give him, and they talk about Arrow and how it led to Flash, and then they give a little nod to Supergirl. And then they kind of push Legends of Tomorrow in there just a little. They don't actually say anything about the Black Lightning show, but they show clips. But they completely ignore Batwoman.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you get one scene of her putting the cowl on.
But that's not in that segment. That's at the very beginning, in like the intro of
that episode. Yeah, the third one. Yeah. Yeah. It's a strange surreal watch in some ways, because again, if you're an ardent DC fan, the mythos of all these characters are vaguely familiar to you, if not absolutely detailed, etched in your memory. So it's again, just what are we doing with this? What was the purpose outside of being self-serving? And it's frustrating that that's all we're getting out of DC right now are these movies. Black Adam, which I think you said you haven't seen yet, right?
I still haven't seen Black Adam.
It's a vehicle for Dwayne Johnson, and that's it. That is it as far as Black Adam goes. So all these decisions are being made at DC that aren't looking toward the endearment of fans, which this documentary would have you believe is the sole drive for DC. The fans, we're looking to do things for the fans.
Well, they even say at the end of the very first episode, Rosario Dawson, who is narrating the whole thing, the last line she says at the end of the first episode is, "This looks like a job
For the fans.
For the fans." And part of me, so I watched the docuseries twice. I watched through the 3 episodes twice. After the second time, once I had watched the whole thing and kind of had a feel for what it was, the second time when she said that, I sat there and went, wait, are they ultimately saying that if DC ends up failing, it's our fault?
It's the fans' fault, dude. Absolutely. They mentioned it. So who was what was the guy's name talking about the death of Superman? He talking about people were coming up to
Mike Carlin.
Talking about people coming up to him. You can't kill Superman. He's like, you killed Superman.
Yeah, he goes, let me ask you, when's the last time that you bought a Superman comic?
When was the last time they wrote a Superman comic that was worth reading during that time?
Yeah.
When was the last time a storyline occurred that you were vested in during that time?
That was the other thing. So in the brief conversation they have, the brief segment they have on the death of Superman, I think only one of the interview footages from 92 that they showed was a guy actually being upset about them killing Superman.
And apparently
the other
everybody
ones were
dude.
The other ones were people going, yeah, I think it's about time.
Yeah.
I think, or there was the guy who said, yeah, Superman's he's not connected to the real world.
Yeah.
Like and of course, as a Superman fan, I'm just, daggers. Especially the one guy who thinks it's a bad thing. He was like, he's just a Boy Scout.
Yeah, I knew,
like,
when I was watching
dude,
I was like, Laramy hates this guy.
That's the whole point
Laramy hates this
of
guy
Superman.
right now.
That is literally the whole, that they literally said that in this documentary, that's the whole point of Superman.
Yep.
He is the ideal. But what were your thoughts on the way they talked about Batman 66?
So here's the thing. I enjoy Batman 66 as part of the mythos of Batman, part of the history of Batman. I am not a big Batman 66 fan. It is campy to the point of being unenjoyable for me. So I kind of agree with a lot of the people in that docuseries who were saying, oh, this is camp. But then you had more people in the docuseries saying, like, we knew what we were doing. We wanted it to look like this. Everybody knew exactly what they were doing. And I'm like, well, then y'all messed up.
So you got Uslan talking about that he was thoroughly upset with it.
And I'm right there with him. Yep.
Yeah, he felt that it was extremely disrespectful to the character. But then I think it was Jim Lee who
said he took it seriously.
Who said he took it seriously. And then you got Rosario Dawson in the narration, which she's just being fed the
say this.
Which I do want to also mention. So Rosario Dawson is the narrator. She starred in the DC series DMZ. There's no mention of that series
whatsoever
in this documentary.
None.
So honestly, if you were watching this not knowing anything, you would go,
"Who?
Why did they get Rosario Dawson? She's Star Wars.
Was 7 pounds with Will Smith under Warner Brothers? Did they get her to do this?
Yeah, but to then have her say that out of the Batman 66, they discovered Batman can be presented in a whole bunch of different ways. And I just went, what?
We just now figured that out? He'd already been around for 30 some odd years at that point in time. Why are we just now figuring he can be any iteration that he needs to be?
Yeah.
It's again, a lot of points of frustration with the docuseries. And the Batman stuff, and that's the thing. So we were talking about at the very beginning of this, the Trinity is untouchable as far as DC goes. Like they're always,
everything always comes back,
revolves around them.
Yeah.
But you're getting, I don't know, man. You're getting to a point where I fear there's going to be, if there isn't already, some what's the word I'm looking for here, Laramy? Just some people being worn out with the Trinity.
So you say with the Trinity, a lot of people, and even some of my co-hosts have had conversations about, are we starting to experience superhero
fatigue? Fatigue's what I'm looking for. There you go. Yep.
Yeah. Are we starting, Marvel, DC, doesn't matter. Are we starting to experience superhero fatigue? My answer to that is never, but average person, possibly.
I agree. And I think, again, for us who are the fans who read the comic books, who collect the figures, who devour any media we can. No, we're not going to experience that on a level that the average fan is going to start experiencing it. And I think you're seeing that, not to get off on a tangent, you're seeing that with some of the Disney Plus shows and the ratings for them. And like people are starting to get a little tired.
Yeah, where Secret Invasion, I admit I have not watched it yet.
Yeah.
And I read the other day that it's one of the lowest rated Marvel shows yet. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at you and I mean, we're talking in a video chat right now. I'm sitting in a room surrounded by Superman memorabilia.
Yep.
You're sitting in a room surrounded by Batman
Just tons.
memorabilia.
Yep.
But also, I notice I can also see a couple of Braves things behind you.
Yeah.
Both of us are fans of the Atlanta Braves.
Absolutely.
I mean, the Atlanta Braves, every baseball team's playing 100-something games a year, and I will probably say I've watched 80% of them so far.
100 for me, but yeah.
So, well, some of them happen while I'm at work.
I was like, you also have children. I have time to sit down and do a little more. But yeah, and that's the thing. Like, we don't get fatigued with those kind of things. One, because, and maybe, I don't know, maybe comic books can take a page on this. Baseball decided to take a look at what it was doing. It wasn't working. And they've decided to refresh some things, change some rules, update some of their policy, and it is made for a more enjoyable game for the average fan. Us as dedicated fans, we were going to watch anyways.
So that brings me to this point as well that I was bringing up with the Braves. So neither one of us are fair weather fans.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're watching the Braves. You know, I've watched them since their big run in the 90s and that first World Series win.
Yep.
You know, I was watching them before. You know,
I said Murphy years in the 80s. Yeah.
Both of us would get frustrated, you know, just in recent years before the World Series win of the Braves doing the typical school in Georgia, Atlanta thing of making it to the first round of the playoffs or something. And then, I mean, I don't remember what year it is. You can probably say it. I will still remember the year we played the Cardinals in the first round. And the Cardinals just like were doing laps.
That would be the 2019 Mike Fultonavich Game 5, where you give up 10 runs in the first inning, Laramy. Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you for bringing that up. This is a comic book podcast, Laramy.
But my point is that right now with DC, you know, we've got the Flash that just came out. Of course, before that, we had Black Adam, we had Fury of the Gods, and when all of these come out, it's right as Black Adam and Fury of the Gods were coming out. We get all this news about Snyder versus Dead.
Mm-hmm.
DC is going to move on. Warner Brothers is moving on.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going, okay, so what now? And then The Rock gets online, starts talking about he is going to take over. But then he doesn't want anything to do with Shazam. Which, again, as comic book fans, we're going, dude.
It's a direct tie, man.
That is not how your character works.
Can't do that.
You know, even the Joaquin Phoenix Joker has a connection to Batman. And then if he throws Superman in at the end, which then confused us even more.
Yeah. He's back.
Because we're like, wait, I thought Henry Cavill was gone as Superman.
I got pretty hyped for that. I was excited.
He's walking in at the end of Black Adam here. Then we find out that, I mean, they just jam that nail in even further and go, no, Cavill's done.
Yep. Okay.
And James Gunn is now in charge. Now, I think Fury of the Gods happened before the James Gunn announcement.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
So Fury of the Gods happens, and Zachary Levi, even though in this documentary he's like, it's one of the great sets I've ever worked on. And now all Zachary Levi is saying is, I hate this movie.
Yeah. It's like, because at first, Laramy, he's like promoting the fire out of that thing. If you remember, he is like talking it up, and then it happens. This is awful. It's the worst movie I've ever been a part of. Yeah.
And then the James Gunn stuff's mentioned, which he's all over this documentary too.
Yep.
But he's not over this there's no mention of how he's now in control of DC. He's in this documentary because he did the Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
And he has his, love for comics. So James Gunn takes over, and now we're going, okay, now here's this Flash movie that was supposed to come out 2 years ago, and it's all Snyderverse connected. In fact, Wonder Woman's in it, Aquaman's in it. Like
Ezra Miller's also a war criminal now. So.
Yeah, aside from that.
Aside from that point.
So even as a fan, or even as a average fan who's just watching the movies, you can't help but go, what's the point of watching this movie?
Yeah, you're watching it and you're like, Affleck's out, Gal Gadot's out. Like we're
Gal Gadot. So
hold on, wait a minute. No, I wouldn't.
Yeah,
you're gonna spoiler alert me, Laramy.
Okay.
I was gonna say, unless you read the news in the last 2 days,
I did. That she is working with James
Gal
Gunn.
Gadot's back again. Patty Jenkins, not so much, but Gal Gadot apparently is back as. So I'm just like, pick a lane, drive in it for a little while, and let's see where it goes.
Well, I will say there was I think a tweet not too long after Gunn took over where people were saying like, oh, Gal Gadot's no, and I think he replied back to someone. He goes, no one ever said that. Which I will say, there's a great little section about Wonder Woman in this documentary, and talking about how much of a icon and role model she is.
And let me just say, man, Linda Carter still okay. Sorry, just had to get that out.
You're fine.
As a fanboy.
But to have that, and then you've got Blue Beetle that's about to come out, which I'm going, wait, what universe is Blue Beetle in?
He's supposed to kickstart the Gunverse, right? Can we say
okay,
Gunverse
which
on
I don't know.
Sorry.
Which I believe as well. I'm like, okay, so Blue Beetle's part of this new universe they're creating, but then we still have Aquaman 2 coming out later this year.
And so if you're thinking along the lines, Aquaman makes his appearance in the post-credit scenes for The Flash. So, and if Wonder Woman's back now too, so that's technically The Flash's was supposed to be the end of the old one, but it's going to contain characters from that are not supposed to be in, and I don't know anymore. I don't know.
And see, where we really thought that if they were going to do the appropriate thing, is they would use the Flash movie and the fact that he was doing the Flashpoint storyline, they would use that to move from the Snyderverse into James Gunn's regime. The Gunn regime. That would probably be even worse.
Jeez, put that on a t-shirt, Laramy. We just got FCC'd just because of the Gunn regime. Thank you. Great.
Yeah. So that's the whole thing. It's like, I don't know if it's so much fatigue with the superhero genre, or it's so much of the uncertainty. Like, and I've said the same thing about Marvel with Phase 4, now Phase 5. I have yet to see where they're going with any of this.
Yeah. They talk a lot in the documentary about all the resets that the comic book runs do. Like we get the New 52.
There's always a crisis.
Crisis on Infinite Earth.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem at this point in time with the DC or the DC Extended Universe. I don't know what we're calling the film portion of this anymore, but you can't. The average fan can't just jump in at this point in time.
No.
You have. It's not as bad as the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but you have to have some foundational knowledge and some minutia knowledge if you're going to watch these, and that's a problem.
Well, and I will say that's what I like about was it Jeff Johns in the documentary that says he thinks that comic books adapt better in television?
Yeah, because they're episodic. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
Yeah, which is also funny because other than the Arrowverse, which 10 years and now it's dead.
Yeah.
Nothing.
There's not been a successful.
Has been successful.
I mean, we were
for
talking
Marvel
right before we came on. We looked at a couple of figurines here, as nerdy as we are, talking about the Gotham series. Like, if you can't adapt a Batman story to television, you've got a problem. People should have been watching and loving that, and for the most part, I don't think that's the case. But if you've got a problem adopting a superhero that's supposed to be grounded in reality, again, and your best run is Green Arrow and the Flash, when you've still got Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman, the Trinity, that you can't get adapted.
We do have Superman and Lois now.
And it's being critically well received, right? What are the numbers like as far as just a general audience? Are people going in droves to watch that?
Well, I mean, they decided to keep it, so
Okay.
I mean, that's the best argument I can get, and I do think it has been renewed for a season 4.
Well, and that's the other thing. Where do I find all this stuff? It's being broadcast on different platforms, even though it's the same company. I'll say that about.
Well, I do. Well, so let me kind of push on that. I
yeah.
do think that DC is trying to do what Marvel did.
Okay.
Once they, should I say what Disney did?
Yeah, just under everything.
Yeah, once they got a hold of Marvel in the early 2000s, and then they slowly started bringing everything together. The Netflix series, they got those back. They got back all the stuff that was on Freeform.
Yep.
And did what they wanted to with all that. And they're slow again. Then they acquire Fox, and they get the X-Men stuff back, and they're now Fantastic Four, which there are rumors that's been cast for, like, half of them have been cast.
That's what I hear.
So I think DC is trying to do the same thing. I really do. The Arrowverse, I do think, had run its course, and I will say that they did not do Legends of Tomorrow justice. That one should have ended a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
But they gave Arrow a good ending. They gave Flash an amazing ending.
Flash was excellent. Yep, I agree.
Batwoman just never had legs to stand on.
Didn't take off.
So Supergirl, bowed out gracefully. And then you've got Superman and Lois, which technically is another universe.
Mm-hmm.
They've kind of established that this is not the same exact universe as the Arrowverse. It's also supposedly 20 years later from where the Arrowverse was.
Okay.
Because you got to think they've got these teenage sons.
That makes sense.
They never had in any of the Arrowverse stuff. So they've got it, and if they're going to continue on with it, they leave it as its own, segregated thing. Don't mix it with anything, and just kind of let it tell its story and move forward. And audiences coming into it not realizing that it's a completely different Jonathan Kent when they tune in, but I think that's a good thing. I think let's rein it all in. I will say that I do stand by, and 2023 may have been the year to do it. I do wish that DC just said, we're just going to stop, and we're just going to let things ride out for a little bit before we make anything else.
Yeah.
Before we release anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, if that meant scrapping Aquaman 2 and scrapping The Flash, I think we may have been upset at first, but I think we would have gotten over it.
I tend to agree with you. Again, having seen The Flash, I think we have a little bit different opinions on that. I was not thoroughly impressed, or did I enjoy it? And so I don't think I'd have been upset about any type of cancellation of that, or of Aquaman 2 or 3 or whatever Aquaman we're on right now. I don't even know which
It's 2.
I don't even know which Aquaman.
It's 2.
So here's something I was thinking about watching the docuseries and kind of going to a bigger picture thing. I don't see, and maybe it's because I don't devour enough Marvel, I don't see Marvel doing this big bargaining documentary series to Disney. So where has DC gone wrong? What specifically, if you had to pick one thing, why are we in a position where DC is begging for their lives through this documentary series?
That's one to have to think about.
Yeah,
but
I mean, what I sat there thinking, why has
off the top, it's they tried to compete with Marvel, and they tried to do it too fast.
Is this Batman versus Superman? Is this the root of?
I think it
things?
is.
Okay.
I think the fact that they tried to do the connected, as they called it, the DC extended cinematic universe. They tried to make this connective cinematic world. They went too fast. I mean, it's just the second movie in this this cinematic universe that they all of a sudden are connecting everything. And here's Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman in a movie together. And then you get Wonder Woman's origin story, which just doesn't make any sense. I mean, that is not the way that Marvel did it.
Yep.
And what's crazy is it was Berlanti who talked about the TV shows and how he created the interconnected world in the TV shows the way comics would.
Right.
Where he told Arrow's story for 2 years, and then he brought Flash into an episode of Arrow.
And he gets his own.
And then he gets his own. And they did not cross over. I mean, you did have Oliver, I think, in one of the first episodes, but he's more of just giving him that kind of pep talk of this is, now that you've got these powers, this is how, you need to be a hero. But they didn't have them working together until much later. And then you bring in the other, you slowly filter in these other characters. And I mean, all the Legends of Tomorrow had appeared in the other shows before they got Legends. And of course, Supergirl was on a completely different network. And then even she was in a different universe. So they had to do an episode where Flash travels to her universe. Yeah. And they just do a side little episode together before they brought it all together in that Crisis on Infinite Earths storyline. And I don't think that DC, I think they were just pushing too hard, too fast. And whatever people have to say about Zack Snyder, I still respect Zack Snyder as a filmmaker. I think he gets a little bit of a bum rap because people have to remember that he had to leave Justice League. And
family,
yeah,
family things.
He didn't get to finish it. And whatever people want to say about his 4-hour Justice League that went to HBO Max, I will still say that was a great movie.
I think it's fantastic. Yeah.
And
I'm not a Snyder fanboy, but I think that's well done.
I would not have wanted that to be the theatrical movie. But I also remember that it was when Justice League was first talked about, it was going to be a Justice League Part 1 and a Justice League Part 2.
Yep.
And so if they could have taken that 4-hour movie and split it like that, there you go.
Been down.
But again, to do Justice League and then give us Wonder Woman's origin story, to give us Aquaman's solo story, and then here we are now, 7 years later, you get a solo Flash story. I just think, now I will admit, this Flash story could not have happened before Justice League, but I just think, come on, slow down.
Yeah.
Give us separate movies. That's what Marvel did. You had an Iron Man movie all by itself. You had the Incredible Hulk all by itself with just a little, Tony Stark walks in at the end.
Yeah.
And then you Thor all by himself. And you had these things that interconnected, like Nick Fury or Agent Coulson, or you had this thin thread going through. And you still could have had that thin thread. But they just hit the ground running. And then to do the death of Superman the way they did, which I know I talked about this past summer, but they completely botched that story. Which also brings me, they talk about Death of Superman. They give a nice little piece to Death of Superman. No mention of Reign.
Yeah, which I think may be, and again, I'm not as avid a Superman reader. I enjoyed the Reign of Superman arc almost more than the Death of Superman. That's just me.
Yeah, you're delusional.
Yeah, that's what I hear. But I like multiversal stories, to be honest with you. Like all these different, not necessarily multiversal, but like all these Superman. Because there's a Batman story arc that goes through Batman fighting to take on the Cowl, all that kind of stuff. But I enjoyed
which
that
we
story.
only see a picture of when they're talking about
the Cowl. Yeah, but I enjoyed that storyline. I hate there wasn't any reference other than a glancing blow to that storyline.
Yeah. Well, it was just like after they talk about the death of Superman and they go, okay, what are we going to do now? Well, a year later, we'll break Batman's back.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. No need to talk about that anymore. Let's move on.
Which, again, probably one of the seminal Batman stories at Nightfall that there ever has been. And we just get but again, this was a vehicle to talk about the media side. They tried to make it look like it was about the comics. This was in no way, shape, or form about the comics. This was about how can we keep the film industry part of DC alive.
And not just that, it's to talk about, look at all the great stuff we've done.
What have you done for me lately? And it's not much.
Yeah. But you and I can rant and all.
I was say, yeah. You got another 2 hours?
Yeah, we're not doing this as a full review episode. And so we're not going to say bag it, stack it, or trade it. But I want to ask you, Blake, is this something that someone should watch?
No. Just to be simple. If you're a DC fan, you already know most of, not all this, or you can find it in other places.
Yeah.
If you're not a DC fan, it's just going to make you dislike DC even more. So, no, don't watch it. There you go.
So I'll kind of back you a little bit. Again, I will say, I don't know who this documentary is for.
Yeah.
Because
it's having an identity crisis for sure.
Yeah, it's not for diehard DC fans because, like you said, we already know almost everything that they say. Again, you might find a couple of things. Like, I'll admit, I didn't know that Wonder Woman was named the UN's ambassador for women's rights or whatever she was, and I didn't know that whole controversy. I will admit I didn't know any of that. And I love the other thing. I keep thinking of other things. When they talk about Wonder Woman and they talk about, William Marston that created her.
Yep.
They mention about his open relationship with his wife and then they move on.
No,
and then they just move on. Yeah. Yeah. We're not. Then there was the other line that Rosario Dawson says when they talk about the images of her being tied up. And she says that wasn't Marston's only reason.
Only reason. No,
yeah,
it was his
or
major,
it wasn't his intended reason,
or
however she says it. Yeah,
and see that's the thing. Like they mentioned that, and I'm like, no, hold on, go back to that. I would be curious to hear more about how that affected his perception and vision for Wonder Woman. But we just glance over it, and that's that.
Yeah. Go watch Professor Marston and his Wonder Woman. There is a movie, and then if you are not a DC fan. You watch this and this is where I disagree with you.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to make you hate DC or dislike DC. If anything, it's going to make you even more confused about DC.
Okay. I'll change my wording to frustrated by DC then, if that helps. Like this is
possibly.
Yeah. Because you're going to be looking at something and it is such a thinly veiled attempt at a legitimate documentary that I think even the least intelligent of people are going to see through what they're trying to do, which would lead to frustration at DC if you're not a DC fan, or if you are a DC fan.
But it is, I think Blake will agree with me, it's a 3-hour promotional video.
Yeah, 100%. You're right. It could have been a Blu-ray extra for an hour and it'd been good.
Or honestly, this is something that, again, you air at like a stockholders
convention
meeting.
Of some kind. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I mean like an executive stockholders
You want to show it to
meeting.
executives. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. This is something that you show at the big stockholders meeting to pump them up about, hey, we acquired DC and, here's the stuff we can do with DC.
Not much of anything.
There is good in this, and there is stuff that I will wholeheartedly agree with. Even The Rock, when Dwayne Johnson said the phrase, there is a DC
Something
character for everyone.
I agree with that. Sure.
I wholeheartedly I 100% agree with you.
Yep.
Dwayne Johnson. There is a character out there for everyone.
Agreed.
I do. And I like that they do talk about Marvel and not
they didn't
really in a
away
negative
from
way.
That. Sure. Yeah.
And they don't really talk about them in a negative way. They talk about Image, which they absolutely don't talk about in a negative way, considering Jim Lee.
Yeah, that's his baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get a little talk about Vertigo, and we see some of the Spawn
which Vertigo
and,
is,
right.
Vertigo is DC,
right.
And that's another thing. I'd like a Vertigo documentary.
Yeah, now that would be, that's what you want.
Give me Vertigo. Give me more about Neil Gaiman creating stuff.
Yeah.
Like, give me all. I want to learn more about this British invasion of DC.
Yeah, Grant Morrison.
Give me more of that.
Garth Ennis. Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Like I said, we could rant about probably other stuff. If you want to see it, see it. That's what I'll say to you. If you have no interest, or if you're a big DC fan, nothing's gonna move you about this. So it is what it is. But we'll go ahead and wrap things up here. Thank you, Blake, for joining me.
Absolutely, man. Anytime.
Yeah. So you can check this off now you can remove it from your list.
Yeah, I can take it off of my list for sure.
On Max. I still refuse to call it Max. It's still HBO Max.
It's HBO Max. Yeah. Why would you remove the most iconic part of your name? That's a discussion for another time.
Yeah, because I'm sorry. Cinemax was like the bottom tier of premium channels, even though it was owned by HBO.
It was rough.
It was like, no, HBO, Showtime, those were your top two.
Yeah.
Cinemax was not.
No,
Cinemax was definitely not. It showed the lesser movies, and I think it was even cheaper than the other two. So I don't know why you stuck with Max. But aside from all of that, let's move on.
Sorry about that.
All right. So rate and review the show. Follow us on social media. All that. Show us all that love. But for today, for Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page. I feel like I was about to burp.
I was like, stretch it out, man. You go and get ready, dude. Limber up.
I really do feel like I need to burp. And I don't want to start and then it all of a sudden happen. There we go.
There it is. Get it out of there.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and listen to an 80s Flick Flashback podcast once in a while, you could miss it. Do you love movies of a certain age? Do you miss the days of VHS tapes, VCRs, and the video rental stores? Does the thought of another 80s movie being remade seem inconceivable? My name is Tim Williams. I'm the creator and host of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. On each episode, I'm joined by guest co-hosts to discuss one of the many movies released in the 1980s. We share our first-time watch memories, our favorite scenes, and even learn some behind-the-scenes stories about the cast and crew along the way. New episodes are released every other Friday on your favorite podcasting platform. So make like a tree, get out of here, and go listen to an excellent episode of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. The ad is over. Go home. Go.